Hello guys, this is your friend Dark Fox 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto inherited a power older than the gods, and Hinata, Tsunade, Kushina, and others were drawn to his awakening. Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Chapter 1. Discovery. Why would you help a demon? It killed your parents, didn't it? It only thinks about itself, how it can get stronger, how it can get revenge, Mizuki said while he looked at Iruka lay bleeding on the forest floor. Naruto was behind a tree at the tree line, trying to stay as quiet as possible. He still couldn't fathom what Mizuki-sensei had said. I am the fox. I'm the Kyuubi no Yoko. I can't be, can I? It made more and more sense when he thought about it. That was why all the villagers hated him. That was why no one cared for him. That was why he didn't have parents. You are right. That's how the fox would be, Iruka said. Naruto tried hard not to cry out loud. Even Iruka agreed. The only person other than the Sandaime Hokage who actually cared for him, the one he thought was like a father, or maybe a brother, thought he was a demon. But that is not who Uzumaki Naruto is. He is one of the most caring person I know, and he just wants to be acknowledged. He may have that damned fox sealed inside him, but that doesn't make him the fox, more than a sealing scroll makes it what is sealed inside it. He is my student, and more than that, he is a person I care a great deal about. He is like family to me. I won't let you hurt him. Naruto was smiling. And not just a little smile. It was an ear-to-ear, sun shining out of your mouth, your chin is hurting smile. He had someone who thought him as family. Then his face turned serious. Iruka-sensei, his big brother figure, his precious person, was going to get hurt. Naruto ran out from his hiding spot, just to see Mizuki throw his Fuma shuriken. Naruto ran as fast as he could, but he wasn't fast enough. He could see it get closer and closer to Iruka-sensei. Naruto ran and ran, but he wasn't fast enough. It was 3 meters from Iruka now. He wouldn't make it. He wasn't fast enough to protect the first person to really acknowledge him. No. Naruto yelled with all his might, his arm reaching out for Iruka. The earth began to quake, and a big cluster of pink crystals grew out of the ground, blocking the shuriken. That left 2 academy instructors and students speechless and stunned. Naruto snapped out of it first, turning to face Mizuki with the most serious look he had ever given. He pointed at him. I won't let you hurt Iruka-sensei. Not now, not ever. He put his hand in front of him, weaving a hand seal crossing his index and middle fingers, Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A big cloud of smoke exploded in the forest. When the smoke cleared, Mizuki and Iruka couldn't believe what they were seeing. Over 1,000 orange-clothed Narutos were standing in the clearing and the surrounding trees. As one they charged towards Mizuki. Not now, not ever. Screams could be heard all over Konoha, as the now traitorous Konoha Nin was beaten by a 12-year-old academy student. 2 minutes later. Sorry Iruka-sensei, I think I may have gone a bit overboard, the blonde said with his trademark smile, while scratching the back of his head. Iruka stood dumbfounded while staring at Naruto. He turned it into a smile. I think I can overlook it this once. He turned his head to look at the discolored formation of meat that was Mizuki lying on the forest floor. He then turned his gaze a bit to look at the big crystal formation. What was that? He turned his gaze back on Naruto, who was still grinning. Close your eyes, Naruto. Naruto just stared back at him. Why? Iruka rolled his eyes. Just do it, Naruto. A few minutes later. Iruka-sensei, are you done soon? Can I open my eyes already? Naruto asked in an annoyed tone. Just a minute. Iruka chuckled. There. Now open your eyes. Naruto did as he was told. There, right in front of him, was Iruka-sensei smiling at him. But something was off. Something was missing. It took Naruto a few seconds to figure out. He didn't have Hitai-8 on. Naruto's hand slowly made its way to his forehead. Yay! I did it. I'm a ninja of Konoha. I'm going to be Hokage in no time. Believe it. Naruto began ranting. But Iruka's thoughts were miles away though those crystals. Did Naruto make them? How did he do that? Does he have a Kekkei Genkai? If it is, it's not one I have ever seen or heard of before. I guess it is possible he could have one, since no one knows who his parents are. I better report to Sandaime soon. He would want to know this. Anyo, Iruka-sensei. Iruka's focus snapped back at Naruto. Sensei, is it true about the fox? Iruka smiled sadly. I'm afraid it is. Naruto looked down on the ground. He mumbled something inaudible. What? Am I the fox then? Naruto asked with tears in his eyes. Iruka placed his hand on Naruto's head and ruffled his hair. Didn't you hear me back there? You are no more the fox, than a sealing scroll is the kunai sealed inside it. Did you mean the other thing too? Naruto asked carefully. What other? He looked at the blonde, before displaying a large smile. Yeah, I meant it. Little brother. Naruto looked up at Iruka again with a smile wider than when he had gotten his Hitai-8. Before Iruka knew it, he was tackled by the little blonde, hugging him tightly while sniffling. In the Hokage's office, the Sandaime had seen it all through his magic little crystal ball. To think Mizuki would betray the village like that. I knew he had some grudges, but to think he would go this far. He looked at the crystal ball, seeing his grandson in spirit hugging the academy instructor. At least something good came out of this whole ordeal. He have finally found someone else than me that he knows acknowledges him. Then he frowned. But what was those pink crystals? I have never seen anything like it. I'll ask Jiraiya about it next time he comes to report in. He may know something about Minato or Kushina that I don't. He looked at the crystal ball again. The two Konoha shinobi were walking out of the forest hand in hand, the smaller figure jumping up and down, while the bigger looked down on him with a smile on his lips. Hiruzen leaned back into his chair, looking up at the ceiling. Ah, I guess I better call back the search parties so they don't drag him off the street. And with that thought, Hiruzen made his way out of his office. The next morning with Naruto. Naruto yawned loudly as he sat up in his bed. He didn't really know what to do the next few days but train. It was not like he had any friends to hang out with. Sure, Choji and Shikamaru didn't hate his guts, but that was about it. There was still 6 days left till the new teams got assigned. He didn't really care that much about who he got teamed up with. Just not from the Sasuke team. Please let it be anyone but Sasuke team. And he wouldn't mind if he got teamed up with Sakura-chan. Though I could imagine she would have a problem with that. He frowned at that thought. Well, better get up and get going, he said to himself, jumping off the bed, and heading for the bathroom. He had just opened the newly made instant ramen when an Anbu appeared in front of him. Naruto froze the instant he saw the Anbu. What have I done this time? I haven't done any pranks since I painted over the Hokage monument. Right after that, it was the test, and then the whole thing with Mizuki Tem. Calm down, Uzumaki-san. You haven't done anything. This time, he waited a second, while giving Naruto a look. It felt like that anyway. Hokage-sama has summoned you. You should be there within the next hour, the Anbu said, and shunshined away before Naruto could respond. Well, it's not like I have anything else I have to do today. I wonder what Gigi wants, he wondered while slurping the noodles in him. 3 bowls and another toilet visit, and he was on his way to the Hokage Tower. Naruto walked down the hallway where you could enter the Hokage's office from. As he walked past the receptionist, he got a dark glare. The blonde ignored it, like all the other glares. He knocked on the door and heard a quick enter, before turning the doorknob. Ah, Naruto, thank you for coming so quickly. We have a few things to talk about. Naruto looked around the room while his grandfather figure talked. There was 3 shinobi standing in front of him. The 2 first he recognized right away, Sandaime Gigi and Iruka-sensei. The last one, not so much. On first eyesight Naruto could see he was old. Not as old as Gigi, but at least up in his 50s. He had long white hair and some red war paint running down his face from his eyes to his chin. He had a Hittite with the kanji for oil on it. Tora, Uma, please leave the office. I think we can defend ourselves against a 12-year-old genin, the Hokage said. Two Anbu appeared from the shadows before Shun shining away. Now, Naruto, why don't you take a seat and explain us what happened yesterday, Hiruzen said, gesturing towards a chair. Naruto went over to the chair and sat down. He turned towards Iruka for reassurance that he wasn't in any trouble. The scarred Chunin just smiled and nodded back at him. That was all Naruto needed, as he began rambling about what had happened, all from the way he had painted to Hokage Monument, to how Mizuki had come to him after the exam, to the battle in the forest. And then I ran towards Iruka-sensei, trying to reach him before the Fuma shuriken hit him, but I couldn't make it. I wasn't fast enough. And then, Naruto trailed off, while looking up on Iruka with a confused and pleading look. And then the earth began to quake, and crystals grew out of the earth, deflecting the shuriken away. Iruka finished. Naruto looked around for the reactions. Sandaime Gigi and the white-haired guy didn't show any. They had calm collected faces. I see. Please continue Naruto, the Sandaime said calmly. Naruto continued his story, to the point where he had used a kinjutsu, and to where he got his Hittite, and the ramen Iruka-sensei had bought for him afterwards. When Naruto was finished, the room was quiet for a minute or two. Naruto was looking carefully at the three shinobi in the room. Jiraiya, do you have any idea what those crystals may have been? The Sandaime asked. Jiraiya looked at Naruto, taking in everything he saw. Gods, he looks so much like Minato. But from what I've heard, he has inherited Kushina's fiery personality. I may know. I heard a rumor a while back. I had just set out on my journey. The nations were still recovering from the Third Great War, and everyone wore their nerves on the outside of their clothes. I heard that a whole village up in Ta no Kuni had been destroyed by a single jutsu. Now that alone isn't something to raise eyebrows over, it was the jutsu in question that was used that was. Where are you going with this, Jiraiya-sama? Iruka asked in a mild annoyed tone. He had already concluded that it was Naruto who had made those crystals. But he didn't know why or how, or if it was dangerous in any way. Everything for its own time, Jiraiya said, looking calmly at Iruka, who was glaring lightly back at him. Apparently it was destroyed by crystals. Now these crystals just grew out of nowhere, they encased people and plants alike. No one knew how. Jiraiya continued. He looked around on the small group, it later got the name Shoten. Iruka's eyes bulged out of their sockets. While he had expected something like that, it was still a bit of a shock. Naruto just looked confused at Jiraiya. I thought the same thing. There's only one way to find out, the Sandaime said, while going through his drawers. He pulled out a little piece of paper, and handed it to Naruto. Please run your chakra through this. Naruto looked questioning at the Hokage for a moment before complying. When he did, the paper split into two, whereafter each piece turned dark brown, before crumbling. Now Naruto looked even more confused. What just happened, Gigi? Naruto looked at the Hokage. Well, Naruto, it looks like you have a Kekkei Genkai, the old Hokage replied calmly. A what? Naruto asked, looking more confused than ever. After 20 minutes of the older shinobi trying to explain the basics of elemental manipulation and Kekkei Genkai, the blonde finally got it, somewhat. But how? I mean, wait, you said this Kekkei Genkai is genetic, right? The old Hokage looked at Naruto, knowing where this was going. Yes, it is. Do you think, maybe, Rest was mumbling, as he turned his head down. Sorry Naruto, you will have to speak up. I'm not as young as I have been, the old Hokage said to Naruto with a kind smile. Do you think this will help me finding out who my parents were? We just have to find someone who had the same abilities as me, and they must have been my family, right? Naruto asked hopefully. The old man looked sad at Naruto. I don't think that's possible. It is true that Shoten is a Kekkei Genkei, but it isn't bound to a family as, let's say, the Byakugan is. I wish I could tell you who you parents were. You just have to be a bit stronger before I can tell you. Minato and Kushina had some powerful enemies. Just hold on a bit longer. You will know soon enough. Naruto's mood dropped a second, but he came right up again smiling. I guess I'll just have to find another way then. The older shinobi smiled at that. There were very few in this world similar to Naruto. The Sandaime then caught the glance he was getting from Iruka. He sighed deeply. He didn't know how Naruto would react. Naruto, he said gently. He got the attention of the blue-eyed blonde, about the Kyuubi. Are you okay? Naruto's smile faltered slightly, but he was still smiling. Yeah. I guess I'm kind of relieved. The Sandaime Hokage eyed him. Relieved. Yeah, I finally understand why all the villagers hate me so much. Why I'm getting all those looks. Guess I'll just have to work harder on getting them to acknowledge me, despite that damned fox. Iruka was smiling at his student. He was proud at how well he was handling it. He wasn't sure he could have done it well as him. That's good to hear, Naruto. Don't let it get you down. If you have any problems, no matter whom or what it is, you just come to me. My door is always open. That got Naruto to grin while putting his hand behind his head. Thanks, Iruka-sensei. Well, it's good that that's settled. Now Naruto, we don't know how this Shoten works, so please don't use any chakra before we have taken a look at how it's used. The old Hokage said with a serious undertone. Naruto nodded. The Sandaime then turned to Jiraiya. Jiraiya, meet with me and Naruto tomorrow at Training Ground 43 at noon. Hi. Good. The Sandaime turned to the blonde. Naruto. I know. Tomorrow at Training Ground 43 at noon. Don't use chakra until then. Can I go now? Naruto asked eagerly. Now having spent almost 2 hours in the room, he was getting restless. The Sandaime chuckled. Yes, you can go. You're dismissed. And then the blonde shinobi dashed out of the office. The Hokage then turned towards Iruka. You're dismissed too, Iruka. Iruka nodded and made his way to the door. Halfway there he turned to face the Hokage. Do you think he will be okay? The Sandaime looked up at Iruka with a smile. You really do care about him, don't you? Iruka nodded with a smile. I think he will be fine. He has gotten some answers today. That should help him some. Hi, Iruka said before continuing walking towards the office door. Just as he was about to close the door, the old Hokage called him out. Iruka, take care of him. Iruka just smiled at the Hokage. Hi. The following day at Training Ground 43. Naruto and the Sandaime were talking as there were still a few minutes until they should meet with Jiraiya. Hiruzen turned towards Naruto and took a good look at him. He still wore that bright orange jumpsuit. Naruto, don't you think it's time you soon bought some new clothes? Naruto looked outrageous at the Hokage at that question. Why? What is wrong with my clothes? He asked while looking down, tucking on his clothes a bit. Well, you're ninja now. And ninjas can't really go around with bright colors so the enemy will spot them faster, can they? I guess you have some point, Naruto grumbled. But what am I supposed to do? I can't really go into a regular clothing store, since they won't sell me anything. And the few places that will triple or quadruple the prices as soon as I enter. Hiruzen frowned at that. Naruto had a good point. He would have to talk to the boy's new Junin instructor about that. Maybe he could help him. A puff of smoke appeared in front of them. Glad to see you could make it, Jiraiya, Hiruzen said to his former student. I hope I'm not late. No, you just made it. Well, let's get to it. The two elder shinobi turned towards Naruto. Now, the reason we're here is because we need to make sure your Shoten isn't dangerous, the Hokage said. Why would it be dangerous? The orange-clad genin asked. It was Jiraiya who answered. Well, normally with jutsu, the greater the power, the greater are the risks. We want to make sure you don't hurt yourself. Naruto didn't seem convinced, but complied. Jiraiya nodded at Hiruzen. Good then. Naruto, can you tell me how you did it in the forest? I don't really know. I just tried everything to save Iruka-sensei. I was desperate and was willing to do anything to save him. I had my arm put out like this, Naruto said while showing what he had done. As before, the earth began to quake, and pink crystals appeared out of the ground. Both Jiraiya and Hiruzen were wide-eyed. While Hiruzen had seen it through his crystal ball, it was another thing to see it happen with your own eyes. How did you do it? Jiraiya asked. I don't know. I just channeled some chakra, while thinking of the crystals from yesterday, Naruto answered. Jiraiya thought about that for a bit. He then got an expression like he had an idea, try to think of it shattering. Naruto did what he said, and to his amazement, the crystal shattered in tiny pieces, making the air glitter lightly in pink. Amazing, was all Jiraiya could say. Hiruzen looked at Jiraiya. What are you thinking? I think it's controlled by his thoughts. He has to channel the chakra to make it, but he just have to think of what he wants, and it's going to do it. It will probably not work on higher level jutsu, but on the lower, I would say D and C rank jutsu, he just has to think of it. Hiruzen nodded while looking at Naruto. Okay Naruto, try to make. Next morning in Naruto's apartment. Naruto yawned loudly while stretching. He took a few minutes sitting in bed and waking up, before making his way to the bathroom. While he was taking a bath, he was thinking about what happened yesterday. They had discovered a lot about his shoten. It is a combination of Fuden and Doden, as the chakra paper had said. Jiraiya had theorized that he used Doden to find minerals and stuff like that, while he used Fuden to compress it under high pressure, successfully making crystals. He could crystallize anything they put him to. Earth, wood, water, grass, really anything that had mass, and wasn't energy. He could even crystallize living things, as they had discovered when he accidentally crystallized a bug. It was really like having a weapon on hand all the time. Jiraiya had also told him about the secrets of Kage Bunshin halfway through the day, so he had made about 100 clones, putting them to learning his shoten, thus why he already had such control over it. Jiraiya said he was the only one who could train this way, due to him having such a large chakra reserves. When they were about to leave, Hiruzen had pulled him aside and asked him to go to the library today. Naruto wasn't really a reader, and had complained loudly about it, but as Hiruzen said, if you want to be a ninja and the Hokage nonetheless, you need to have knowledge about the world. If not, people will just use you. That had made Naruto promise that he would do it. He also planned to go find a store who would sell him a new outfit, though he didn't know if he would be successful. Naruto ate his breakfast and brushed his teeth, before making his way out the door. Scram demon. And don't come back. Naruto sighed as he was kicked out of another store. Walking off, Naruto tried to think of a way to get into a store. He could use henge, but it would dispel as soon as someone touched him. And he couldn't just use the I'm a ninja under the direct command of the Hokage deal. It would only work on buildings owned by the government, like the library, not private-owned stores. He sighed deeply again. Looking around, the blonde found a store that looked fairly non-descriptive. The only sign that told him it was for shinobi was the rather large kunai symbol above the door and the sign that read, Higurashi Weapon Shop. Deciding to give this place a try, Naruto walked in. Looking around, the first thing Naruto noticed was that whoever owned this place had an obvious love for weapons. There were racks upon racks of weapons lining the entire shop. Swords, staffs, scythes, it seemed that anything anyone could name was there. He had never seen so many different weapons in one place ever, and some of these weapons he had never seen at all. It was enough to make even someone like Naruto, who knew next to nothing about weapons, drool. Can I help you? Naruto stiffened and almost shouted as he spun around. Behind him was a young girl that was maybe a year older than him, wearing a Chinese-style pink tank top, dark green cargo pants, and had her hair done up in 2 buns. To Naruto they made her kind of look like a panda. Or a mouse. Naruto did his best not to snicker at the thought. Hello? Tenten asked, while waving her hand in front of Naruto's face. He blinked a couple of times. What? Naruto said, blushing in embarrassment as he took a step back and put a hand behind his head. The girl just looked at him before she rolled her eyes at the kid's inattentiveness and shrugged. I was asking if you needed help finding anything. Naruto blinked in surprise. You work here. That's right. The girl said. My name is Higurashi Tenten. My father owns this store, so I come in and help when I'm not on missions. You're a shinobi then? Naruto asked curiously. Yep. I've been a shinobi for about a year now, Tenten replied. That's awesome, Naruto stated with a large grin. I just graduated. He blinked as he remembered why he was here. You know you can help me. I was looking into getting some new clothes. I can see why, Tenten said with an amused smirk. Your clothes are hideous. Hey, Naruto said, feeling the need to defend his clothes. These clothes are warm and comfortable and ugly. Tenten finished with a grin. Seriously, who wears orange? I like orange, Naruto shouted indignantly. Seriously, what was it with people continuing to diss on the color orange? It was the best color in the world. It's my favorite color. Even so, it's not a very good color for a ninja. Tenten replied, finding the boy's defensiveness amusing. Especially when it's so bright. He took a deep breath to calm down a bit. I guess I can see the logic in that. Anyways, can you help me? Sure, Tenten replied, amused by Naruto's reaction. She took him over to the clothing section of the store. So what are you looking for exactly? She asked. Naruto thought about what he wanted to look like. He needed something that made him look cool and added a mysterious persona to him. Something that screamed powerful and awesome. Something. You know, I'm not sure, he said sheepishly. I've never really shopped for clothes before, so. He had actually tried clothes shopping once when he was 6 and had just gotten an apartment, however the store owners had kicked him out before he could actually shop. That had actually been the same day he found his jumpsuits in the trash, after the same store he tried to shop from had thrown them away. You're kidding, right? Tenten looked at him incredulously. When he shook his head, she sighed. Then it looks like we're just going to have to see what works. She pulled him over to the clothing section of the store, where she began grabbing different styles of clothes and then making him change into many styles she gave him, essentially turning him into a life-sized dress-up doll. Eventually she found a style that fit. Now Naruto was wearing dark black shinobi pants that tucked into a pair of black shinobi sandals. He had a black sleeveless Chinese-style shirt like hers but with a dark orange trims and with the Uzumaki swirl on the back of it. She had tried to talk him out of wearing any orange but was unsuccessful in getting the blonde to completely rid himself of his favorite color. At least there was less orange than before and it was in a darker tone than his jumpsuit had been. His hands were covered in fingerless gloves and his arms were also covered in black bandages up to his biceps. Lastly, she changed the strap of his Hitai-8, from the dark blue color to black. There, you look much better now, Tenten said, smiling at him. Indeed, he did look much better. Now that she was seeing him without all the orange, he actually looked cute. Now you're like a real shinobi. You think so? Naruto blushed as he scratched the back of his head. Of course. So will that be all? Tenten asked. Yes, I think so. For now anyway, he responded with a smile. Tenten, are you out front? Both Naruto and Tenten yelled as they spun around. Naruto found himself staring at a bull of man. Large and built like brick shit house. The man had muscles on every part of his body that Naruto could see, he even had muscles on his muscles. He had brown hair and brown eyes much like Tenten. He was wearing an off-white shirt, brown pants and a pair of brown boots. Damn it too, San. Tenten shouted as she clutched a hand to her chest. How many times have I told you not to sneak up on me? And especially when I'm with a customer. Tenten's dad merely laughed. Aw, take it easy, Tenten. Beside, aren't you shinobi supposed to be more aware of your surroundings? Do you want to be used as target practice again? Tenten asked with a maniacal gleam in her eyes and had one of her hands inside her kunai pouch. Her dad merely sweats dropped before he coughed and turned his attention to Naruto. He looked him up and down, immediately recognizing him. That didn't matter to him, he wasn't as narrow-sighted as some of the other villagers. He worked with sealing scrolls on a daily basis, he knew that the boy in front of him wasn't the demon. And if he had been, he would probably already have destroyed the village, with the way some treated him. Naruto watched with a mixture of shock and weariness as the man looked him over. He was already expecting to get thrown out. No one wanted to sell the demon brat anything. But Tenten's dad just smiled at him, walking over to the cash register, typing in all that his daughter had noted on a block. Now all that stuff you got there will come to around 5,000 yen, Tenten's dad said. Naruto cringed a bit but got out the necessary money. It would put him back by a lot, especially since he would no longer be able to gain a stipend from the Hokage since he was a ninja. But this was for his shinobi career, so he had to. He took out his frog-shaped green wallet, much to the amusement of Tenten, and put the money on the table. Thank you, kid. Hope you'll come back, Tenten's dad said to Naruto while counting the money Naruto had left. He gave the two there one of his most brilliant smiles. Thanks, Mr. Kato, the man replied. Thanks, Kato-san. Naruto bowed before grabbing his equipment and running off with a grin. I'll make sure your store becomes famous when it's selling to me as the Hokage. He yelled out as he left for the library. Naruto was standing outside a big building, a building he had never thought he would set foot in, the library. He sighed deeply and made his way through the front doors. He hadn't made his way in more than a few meters, when a voice called out behind him. Can I help? Why? What do you want? I'm sorry, but you will have to leave, now. Naruto turned around to see who it was. It turned out to be the custodian, a woman who looked to be in her mid-50s said, spitting out the word boy with venom. Naruto remembered what Hiruzen had said to him the day before. Naruto tapped his finger on his Hitai-8, I am a ninja of Konoha, under the command of the direct command of the Hokage. And can I remind you that this is a government-owned building? And who again runs the government? That's right, the Hokage does. Thus, you can't kick me out of here. The custodian was clearly irritated by this, but as Naruto had pointed out, she couldn't kick him out. She sighed, fine, but if you break anything, you will be sorry, she said, and walked away. Naruto snorted mentally at this. Since he was told about the Kyuubi, he had been near stunned by the naivety of the population of Konoha. One thing was the civilians who knew nothing of sealing, but the ninja population too. They used sealing on a daily basis. He shook it off him, and made his way to the shinobi section of the library. When he was there, he put his hands in a ram seal, making 10 clones. Alright guys, I need your help finding some books. Anything on chakra, seals, taijutsu and basic shinobi skills will be fine. Also, try to find something on Biju, Jinchuriki and anything related. With that said, he and his clones looked through the bookshelves looking for said books. In the end he found 27 on the various subjects. He made his way home, and began to read. 3 days later, Naruto was on his way to training ground 43. Gigi had given it to train the week before the team assignments, which was still 2 days away. The Sandaime had said it was because he needed to get his Shoten under control before getting on a team, so he wouldn't put them or himself in danger with it. He made his way to the training field, and did what he had done the last few days. He put his hand to form the ram seal, and made about 100 clones, and split them up to do various tasks. 50 clones were working on his Shoten, which were coming along nicely. He had learned to crystallize stuff fast, and could even make crystals from the humidity in the air. He had also made quite a few new jutsu, most of the based on jutsu of other elements. It wasn't as hard as he had thought it to be. He would just have to think about something crystallizing, and it would. The next 25 were working on his chakra control. He had perfected the floating leaf exercise that they had learned in the academy, and were now slowly making progress on the tree climbing exercise. He could run up the tree by now, and could walk about 2/4 of the way. He had decided that he wouldn't move on before he could fight on a vertical surface for about 10 minutes. And the last quarter were reading. Reading anything he could get his hands on. Most of the jutsu and exercises were from the books. He had learned a lot about Biju, one of the subjects he was most interested in, for obvious reasons. He continued training the next few days, until the team assignments. The day of the team assignments. The alarm clock ringed high. Naruto almost fell out of his bed, trying to punch the stupid thing into oblivion. When he finally managed to turn off the stupid thing, he sat up, scratching his eyes and looked around with sleepy eyes. He saw the calendar, and within a second he was wide awake. Today I get my team assignment. He jumped out of the bed, and made his way to the bathroom to wash up and brush teeth. He thought about what he had done the last week. He had advanced rather quickly due to the Kage Bunshin. He had done almost 2 years of training in the last week. He now had decent control over Shoten, but it could still be improved. His chakra control were a ton better. He could no fight on the tree surface for about 4 minutes, before he fell off. And he had read. He was surprised how much it had mattered. He could actually understand what people were saying most of the time now. Nothing like when the week started. Overall, he had improved a lot, though he still needed to be careful. The third day he had dispelled all his clones at once, and had fainted from fatigue alone. He had woken up an hour later with a throbbing headache. He wasn't do that again, and had the following days dispelled his clones in groups of 10, with a few minutes interval. He had also met Konohamaru, the honorable grandson of the Sandaime Hokage, and his teacher Ebisu, who hated his guts. He had met Konohamaru when he had turned in his ninja registration form. Konohamaru had come to challenge the Sandaime for the title of Hokage, but had tripped over his own scarf, halfway across the room. It had been fun to see the reaction of his teacher, when he slammed him across the head after he learned who he was. Konohamaru had followed him later, asking him to teach him. Naruto had complied, and taught him Henge no Jutsu and Oroku no Jutsu. Later Ebisu had come, saying he didn't want Naruto to teach. Konohamaru couldn't figure out why, but Naruto knew right away, when he saw the eyes of Ebisu. It was the same as most of the villagers, full of hate towards him, for something he had no control over whatsoever. He had beaten him with his new Harem no Jutsu, sending him flying halfway across Konoha because of his nosebleed. He had after told Konohamaru that there was no shortcut to becoming the Hokage, and that he had to beat him to get there. Konohamaru told him that they weren't student and teacher anymore, they were rivals. He had left after that. After he was done in the bathroom, he made his breakfast, which was made up of bread and various vegetable. Naruto had read that he needed to eat better if he wanted to grow. Naruto was still the shortest from his class, which annoyed him to no end. He was sitting and eating, looking across the room. He saw the new picture he had put up the day before. It was his picture for the ninja registration. He had asked Hiruzen if he could get a copy of it to hang up, and was allowed. He was in the picture, of course, and stood with an angel to the camera, with his hand, back down towards the ground, pointing slightly towards it. From his hand, to the corner of the picture, and across the top, the air was glimmering slightly pink, clear evidence of his Shoten. It had taken some persuasion on his part, but the Hokage had finally said yes. He was quite proud of it, clear evidence of his shinobi status. After he was done with his breakfast, he bolted out the door, and made his way to the academy. Today I'm going to get a team. I am officially going to be a genin, a ninja of Konoha. It's the first step on the way to become the Hokage. XXX, XX, XXX, XX, XXX. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Technique. Similar to the Bunshin no Jutsu, this technique creates clones of the user. However, These clones are actual copies, not illusions. The user's chakra is evenly distributed among every clone, giving each clone an equal fraction of the user's overall power. The clones are capable of performing techniques on their own and can even bleed, but will usually disperse after 1 or 2 solid blows. They can also disperse on their own. The clones will be created in roughly the same condition as the original. When they disperse, all the knowledge they have gained return to the creator. Bunshin no Jutsu, clone technique, a ninjutsu that creates an intangible copy of one's own body, without any substance. Since the clone itself doesn't have the ability to attack, and thus can only be used to confuse the enemy, it is mainly used in combination with other ninjutsu. It's a basic technique, but depending on one's ingenuity, it can be used effectively. The clones will dissipate when they come into contact with something. Kekkei Genkei, bloodline limit, literally meaning a technique limited to inheritance by blood, or abilities passed down genetically in specific clans. It's possible for a ninja to have more than one of these abilities. Kekkei Genkei abilities that work via the user's eye are called dojutsu. Other Kekkei Genkei include mixing one type of elemental chakra with another, creating a new one unique to the users, which is usually impossible for normal ninja. Dojutsu, eye techniques, are Kekkei Genkei that utilize the eyes, granting the wielder ocular abilities. Being a byproduct of specific Kekkei Genkei, dojutsu are not classified as one of the major jutsu types. They do not require the use of hand seals and in some cases facilitate in the use of or defense against genjutsu, taijutsu and ninjutsu and then defeat their opponent. All known dojutsu also provide the user with some unique abilities, such as an extended field of vision or predictive capabilities. The use of dojutsu oftentimes consumes a great deal of chakra. Shoten, crystal release, is a rare and specialized field of elemental ninjutsu that can create crystal as well as manipulate already existing crystals and crystalline structures. Doden, earth release, is one of the basic elemental nature transformation techniques and allow the user to manipulate the surrounding earth for offensive and defensive purposes or create it, be it dirt, mud, or rock. Fuden, wind release, is one of the 5 basic elemental nature transformations. It is performed by making chakra as sharp and thin as possible. Wind release is mainly short to mid-ranged offensive techniques that combine brute force and keen precision to deal cutting and slashing damage. A rarity among the 5 chakra natures, wind techniques are usually performed by generating air circulation and can be enhanced through this method as well. Wind nature chakra can also be channeled into blades to increase their cutting power and overall range. Kaden, fire release, is one of the basic elemental nature transformations. It is performed by molding superheated chakra inside the stomach before releasing it via the lungs and mouth. There are also variants to this in the form of some mediums such as the use of gunpowder, explosive tags and chakra flow into a weapon. Sweden, water release, is one of the basic elemental nature transformation techniques that allow the user to manipulate pre-existing water, or create their own, by turning their chakra into water. It takes much more ability to create the water than to manipulate what is already available and expel it from their mouths. One of the most versatile of the 5 basic chakra natures, water release techniques can not only change shape but state as well. Moreover, the water becomes more solid in the process as well. Raiden, lightning release, is one of the basic elemental nature transformation techniques that allow the user to generate lightning by increasing the high-frequency vibrations of their chakra, allowing for piercing damage and fast movement. The electricity paralyzes the target so that they are unable to move and leave them vulnerable to a finishing strike. While uncommon, lightning can be infused into bladed weapons in a way similar to Fuden through chakra flow for increase the piercing power through vibrations, with the added effect of inducing numbness. When the technique is released from their bodies, and thus not requiring physical contact, it does not move as fast as true lightning. Instead, due to the control the user has to exert over it, it moves far slower, which give opponents time to still react. Based on the exhaustion seen when using lightning release techniques, it can be presumed that they require more chakra than the other nature transformations. Kyuubi no Yoko, the nine-tailed fox. Biju, tailed beast. The tailed beasts are large, living forms of chakra, sometimes referred to as chakra monsters, giving them power that far outmatches most shinobi. However, this immense strength is tempered by their bestial nature, which restricts them from being intelligent enough to use it effectively. As such, when the tailed beasts are sealed within humans, they are able to benefit from the knowledge of their hosts, giving them the ability to better utilize their powers. Jinchuriki, power of human sacrifice, are humans that have Biju sealed within them. They exhibit extraordinary powers, and in some cases are more powerful than their tailed beasts, because they have the intelligence to use the beast's powers effectively. Henge no Jutsu, transformation technique. Given all the missions ninja are assigned to, battle, intelligence gathering, and diversions, this is a priceless ninjutsu. It is typically used to change into people other than one, but one also has the ability to change into animals, plants, and even inanimate objects like weapons. This gives this technique an abundance of uses. The transformation of a skilled shinobi will be exactly like the genuine article, so it will be impossible to tell the two apart. On the other hand, a transformation performed by an inexperienced person will have obvious discrepancies. It will be impossible to deceive anyone with it. This is one of the most basic ninjutsu, as such most shinobi know how to perform it. The transformation technique is considered to be among the more difficult E-rank techniques, since it requires constant emission of chakra while mentally maintaining the form. On top of that, the user would be, most likely, interacting with the environment. This puts mental strain on an inexperienced ninja. Thus the best way to determine if it is indeed a transformation is to cause this strain upon the user, though this is of course not always successful. Oroku no Jutsu, technique. The technique is simply a henge no jutsu used to transform the user into a beautiful woman in a very seductive pose with mists of smoke covering her privates, or in a bathing suit. Harem no Jutsu, harem technique. This technique is considered to be an advanced variation of the Oroku no Jutsu, which is combined with the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. After creating a dozen or so clones, Naruto uses this technique to transform them all into the same beautiful. Naruto uses this technique when he either wants a better chance of his target falling victim, or when the technique fails to fulfill its purpose. Naruto made his way towards the academy, ignoring the usual stares and glares. It didn't really bother him anymore, he had gotten used to it over the years. The only difference the last week was that he knew why he was getting them. That helped a lot, it was a burden lifted from his shoulders. He didn't have to wonder why. As he walked down one of the alleys, when he saw someone trying to blend in with the railing behind him, using a sheet as cover. The only problem was that it was hanging 90 degrees wrong. He knew right away who it was. Before he could call him out, Konohamaru jumped out from his cover, yelling at him, "Fight me." Sadly, he hadn't even taken one step before he tripped over the sheet. Naruto's sweat dropped. "What are you doing, Konohamaru? I expect nothing less from the man I respect," Konohamaru said, getting up. Naruto was silent for a few seconds. "I didn't do anything." "You tripped." Again. Konohamaru totally ignored this and got up, making a hand sign, "Fight me fair and square." Naruto shook his head. "Sorry, Konohamaru. I have to go to my team assignment meeting now." "Team assignment?" the boy asked confused. "Yeah, I'm a ninja of Konoha starting today," he said smiling, pointing at his Hitai 8. Konohamaru stared in awe. He smiled at his big brother figure. "Okay, Ni-san. I guess we'll have to do it another day then." And with that, the two boys went on their way. Naruto made it to the academy a little earlier than normal. Heck, normally he would have met at least an hour late, since none of the teachers really bothered with him. But that wasn't on his mind today. Today was the first day in the rest of his life, the first step towards becoming the Hokage. Nothing could bring him down. If he was honest with himself, he didn't care much about which team he was assigned. Just not Sasuke Tem, he is way too broody for me. And I wouldn't mind getting on the same team as Sakura-chan, though I could image her having a problem with me. I guess I'll do what Tenten told me to. Naruto was walking down one of Konoha's many streets with Tenten. Since the day he had come her father's store, they had become friends. Well, Naruto's first real friend at his own age. Shikamaru and Choji didn't hate his guts, but they weren't close either. So, have you gotten your team assignment yet? Tenten asked. Naruto shook his head. Nah, we're getting them in 3 days. If I'm honest, I don't really care what team I get on. I'm just happy I graduated. Huh, so you don't care at all? There is no one you would or would rather not be with? She asked doubtingly. Naruto looked at his new friend with a small smile. Well, there is this one guy. Sasuke Tem, he just gets on my nerves all the time. Wait, Sasuke. As in Uchiha Sasuke, the sole survivor of the Uchiha clan massacre. That's the guy, he said while nodding. Ouch, I can understand that. I mean, I can't set myself into his place, to get his whole clan killed, but he is just so brooding. Exactly, she smiled. She rather liked Naruto. Not in romantic manner, but he was a good friend. It was a good break from her two teammates and their eccentric sensei. Naruto was a funny guy, maybe a bit straightforward with things, but nothing she couldn't handle. She took a look around and saw the glares of the villagers. It wasn't her they were glaring at, it was her new friend. She had tried to ask him about it, but he had changed subject rather quickly. She knew that he had pranked most of the villagers when he was a kid. She had found them rather funny. And then a few days ago when painted the Hokage monument. She was impressed. It wasn't anyone who could overpaint a monument, which was visible from most of the village, in daylight, wearing an orange jumpsuit. When she had asked how he had done it, he had answered, "It's easy when no one wants you to exist." That time it was her who changed subject. She was pulled out of her train of thoughts when Naruto started talking again, and then there is Sakura-chan. She raised an eyebrow while smiling. So there's a girl. I guess she hung up on the Uchiha then. Yeah, can you believe it? And every time she asks him on a date, he turns her down, and still she won't go out with me, he answered a bit moping. So, how many times have you asked her on a date? Every time I see her. It's usually just after she gets turned down by Sasuke. I have an advice if you want. Naruto nodded eagerly. Back off. What? Naruto said disbelievingly. I said back off. Try to stop asking her on a date every time you see her. Try just to be there for her. You know, maybe in time she will come around, she said while winking at her blonde friend. Baby steps. Learn to be friends first. Then see where it goes from there. Maybe. Okay, I'll try it, he said, showing her one of his big bright smiles. Good. She nodded approvingly. Flashback end. Naruto opened the door to his classroom, and made his way inside. He hadn't stepped 3 steps inside, before a boy stepped in front of him. Oi, Naruto. Today is the team assignments. You do know that you would actually have to pass the exam if you want in on it, right? It from the brown-haired boy. He wore a pair of dark grayish pants that reached down to his calves, and a gray hooded fur-lined coat with a hood he wore on his head. Under the hood, on his head, was a little white puppy. Alf, Alf. See, even Akamaru agrees, Kiba stated with a smug smile, petting his puppy. Naruto smiled right back at Kiba, while tapping his finger on his forehead protector. Are you blind, dog breath? I have a hit I ate, thus must I have passed. The Hokage himself passed me. Can you say the same for you? Kiba narrowed his eyes, and took a closer look at his hit I ate, just to be sure it was real. When he was convinced, he just came with an HMPH, and turned around to go back to his seat. The blonde genin shook his head with a smile of Kiba's antics. When he was done, he took a look around the classroom for an empty seat. As far as he could see there were 3, one beside Sasuke Tem, and another beside that seat, and one in front of Choji. The last option wasn't really an option in his opinion. It was a known fact that all the Akamaikis were real greedy guts and the new clan heir wasn't an exception. That alone wasn't the problem. The real problem was that not all of his food made the trip from the back it was in, to his mouth. So anyone who says in front of Choji would be showered in food scraps. Naruto took a deep breath, and made his way over to the table where Sasuke sat, and took the seat furthest away from the Uchiha. Naruto reached for his pocket, and took up a book on Fuinjutsu and started reading it, much to the whole classroom's disbelief. Even the Uchiha was brought out of his brooding mood, and raised an eyebrow at the blonde shinobi. Hinata was looking from behind the classroom, where she had taken a seat. Naruto-kun was able to graduate. Maybe, just maybe, I can get on the same team as him, she thought hopefully. Before long Naruto was brought out of his reading, when the whole classroom went quiet. They could all hear something rumbling, like some big animals, like rhinos or elephants, which were running. It was getting closer and closer. You would think that the class would become nervous at the apparent impending doom, but this was a daily routine for them. Before long, two girls almost fell in through the door. First, I win, they yelled, before turning to each other to glare. The first one Naruto recognized right away. It was Sakura-chan. She had bright pink hair, a color Naruto didn't know could appear naturally before he had met her, and green eyes. She also had a rather large forehead, and Naruto knew she had been bullied because of it. To him, though, it was just her, and he loved every part of it. She was wearing a red dress with a white circular design on her shoulders and her back, and she wore dark green shorts. She wore her hitai like a hair band. The second girl was Ino, who had an ongoing rivalry with Sakura. She wore a short purple vest-like blouse with a raised collar, a skirt that was cut off on the sides and bandage on her stomach and legs. She also wore purple and white elbow warmers with this, and her hitai around her waist as a belt. I win again Sakura, Ino said. What are you talking about? My pinky toe entered the classroom before yours by a whole centimeter. Sakura replied, glaring harder. Ino returned the glare, are you blind? The two girls kept bickering like that, and the rest of the class went back to doing what they were doing before. That is, everyone but Naruto. He was looking at Sakura with a blush. He quickly looked away again. Naruto, remember what Tenten said. Give her some space. But there she is, looking over here. And now she's coming this way. Maybe she wants to sit beside me, he thought, as the pink-haired Kunoichi made her way over to the table where Naruto and Sasuke were sitting. He smiled at her. Good morning Sakura-chan. Get out of my way. I want to sit there beside Sasuke-kun, she replied, pointing at the seat in between him and Sasuke. He sighed while getting out of his seat. Fine, get in then. Sakura hadn't expected that. Normally Naruto would get going how uncool Sasuke was, and she would have to hit him. Thank you Naruto, she said, taking her seat. She was just about to talk to Sasuke, when Iruka came in through the door. Okay class, settle down. Most of them didn't hear him, causing a tick mark to appear on Iruka. He used his big scary head jutsu. I said settle down. That got the desired effect. He cleared his throat. Starting today, you are all official ninjas, but you are all still just new genin. It's going to get harder from here. You all will be in a group of 3, where you will accomplish missions under a Junin instructor. That got the class attention. Most of them hadn't expected a 3-man team. Naruto wasn't surprised. The Hokage had given him permission to train the last week because he was gonna be on a team. Iruka continued, we've arranged the groups such that overall abilities are equivalent. I will now announce them. Team 1 is. Naruto started reading his book again, just paying enough attention to react when his own name was called. Team 7 will be Uzumaki Naruto, Haruno Sakura. Internally Naruto was jumping up and down in happiness. Sakura quite the opposite. and Uchiha Sasuke, that got the reversed effect. Naruto couldn't help but throw a quick glare at Sasuke. The gods must really be against me. There are 27 people that have graduated, and I get on the same team as Sasuke Tem. He sighed. Well, at least I'm also on the same team as Sakura-chan. Next, Team 8. Hyuga Hinata, Inuzuka Kiba and Aburame Shino. There won't be a Team 9, as last year's Team 9 is still in effect. Team 10 will be Yamanaka Ino, Nara Shikamaru and Akamaiki Choji. He called up the last few teams. That's it for the teams. Now, your Junin sensei will be here after lunch. You can do what you want until then. With that said, the different teams went out the classroom. In the council chambers, it was the day of the assignments of the new Genin teams, and thus there was a council meeting. Currently all were present but the Hokage. The council chambers consisted of the Hokage's seat at the end of multiple tables. Beside the Hokage's seat were two smaller tables where the elders sat. Their names were Homura Mitokado, Kaharu Udatane and Shimura Danzo. Homura and Kaharu were old teammates of Hiruzen, and had retired from their shinobi carriers and settled back as elders and counselors for the Sandaime. Danzo was an old rival of Hiruzen. While he had Konoha's best at heart, he didn't always care of the way to get there. From the Hokage's seat point of view, the left side was reserved for the business people of Konoha, the 6 that had been elected from their respective areas. These people didn't have Konoha's best at heart. What they cared about was getting more power, and getting more wealth. The right side was reserved for the 8 major clans of Konoha: Senju, Uchiha, Hyuga, Inuzuka, Aburame, Akamaiki, Nara and Yamanaka. Though, because of the Uchiha massacre, the Uchiha seat was empty until the time of the last Uchiha to be 16 years of age, and the Senju seat was empty because the last known survivor of said clan, Senju Tsunade, wasn't in Konoha, and hadn't been for years. These people were the only one beside the Hokage who were not thinking of ways to get more power, but had Konoha's best at heart. In the seat closest to the Hokages was none other than Hiashi Hyuga, the head of the Hyuga clan, which was currently the largest clan in Konoha. Hiashi was a man who, despite his cold demeanor, always put his clan and Konoha first, even when it went against his own beliefs. The next seat from Hiashi was Sume, the clan head of the Inuzuka clan. This clan was well known for their collaboration with ninja dogs, their pack mentality and their hot-headedness. They always believed in looking out for family, and were well known for their fierce loyalty to others. Sitting next to the Inuzuka matriarch was Shibi Aburame, the clan head of the Aburame clan. The Aburames were well known as a clan that followed logic, believing that to do otherwise would cause more issues to arise than need be. They were also ostracized because of the bugs they carry. The last in the lineup were the members of the Yamanaka, Nara and Akamaiki clans, who were well known for their powerful teamwork. These 3 were Inoichi, Shikaku and Chuza, and they had been known as the Ina Shika Cho Trio, due to the teamwork they used during the Third Great Shinobi War. Finally the Sandaime entered the chambers, and took his seat. As it seems we're all here, we will get started. Now first point of order is, sorry Sandaime-sama, but I have disturbing news that I think the council should hear. Danzo interrupted the Hokage. Hiruzen didn't seem affected by this, as he had known this would come sooner or later. He was pretty sure it was because of Naruto and his Shoten. He knew he wouldn't be able to keep it a secret long after he allowed Naruto's ninja registration photo to be taken. That, and that he had allowed the blonde to use one of the training ground by himself. He was sure that Danzo would have picked up on that. What is it, Danzo-san? Hiruzen asked more politely than he would have out of the council chambers. It has come to my attention that you have reserved a whole training field for a newly graduated genin. It intrigued me, but I let it go. I'm not one to question the Hokage. Hiruzen mentally scoffed at that. Danzo questioned every action he took. He had tried to get his hand on the seat for a long time. Other than that, he had tried to get his hands on Naruto more than one time, willing to turn him into a weapon of Konoha, due to his Jinchuriki status. He was sure that he would try even harder now that he had found out about the blonde's new Keke Genkai. Hiruzen was, of course, greatly opposing of this. Minato had asked him to make sure Naruto would be safe. He couldn't do much about the villagers, but this he could. He wouldn't let Naruto fall into the grasps of the old war hawk. Never mind what Kushina would have done to the crippled elder if had gotten hold of Naruto. Hiruzen wasn't entirely sure if he'd applaud or be terrified of that outcome. Danzo looked over the chamber. He could see that he had piqued their interest. But then a few days ago, when the elders and I went over the new ninja registration forms, we came across this, he said, taking out Naruto's photo, sending it around the council. He could see many confused looks. We, like you, had no idea what this was. So I sent some of my guards to look for the Jinchuriki. They found him at earlier mentioned training ground. He was training to use Shoten. Yes, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki has Shoten. An hour later. Enough of this. Yes, Naruto has Shoten, but it isn't dangerous. Jiraiya and I have observed and made sure of that. The reason I allowed Naruto to use the training ground was so he could get it under control, and so he wouldn't put his team at risk, Hiruzen said loudly and irritated. The last hour had been nothing but accusations, and pleads about putting the boy down, letting Danzo have him. If any other shinobi or citizen of Konoha had awakened Shoten, you would all be delighted. But because it's Naruto, you're acting like this. I won't have it, he continued, while glaring around the council. The shinobi side had been concerned, but had calmed a bit down. It was the civilians and the elders that caused problem. They hated the boy's guts, because of the Kyuubi. Now I have given you all the answers I'm willing, so we're gonna get on with this council meeting. Now, for the first point of order. Lunch at the academy. Sakura was sitting on a bench outside the academy. They still had some time before their Junin sensei would pick them up. She had just had a not-so-friendly conversation with Sasuke. He had told her that he thought she was annoying. You're annoying, huh, I see. Naruto must have felt the same way. Maybe I can be nicer starting now. I could give him a chance. I never really have gotten to know him, I always brush him off as a pest. He did seem different from before. She was brought out of her thoughts when she saw Naruto coming her way eating a dango. It didn't seem like he had seen her yet. Alright, this is my chance to be nicer to him. Remember to smile, not scowl, smile. With that, she had a really strained smile on her face. Hey Naruto, let's go back to the classroom. Naruto looked up at her. Sakura-chan. I thought you would be with Sasuke, he said the last part a bit sad. Sakura didn't miss that. Yeah, but he had to go do something else. Come on, let's go back to class, she said. This brought a big smile to Naruto's face. You're a genius, Tenten. 3 hours later in the classroom. Why is our sensei the only one who's late? All the other teams have been picked up hours ago. Sakura said annoyed. Team 7 was still sitting in the classroom. Or Sasuke and Naruto were sitting at their respected desks, and Sakura was going back and forth, getting impatient with their new sensei. Naruto sighed and looked up from his book. Sakura-chan, it can't be helped. He'll get here when he get here. While he agreed with her, he was getting rather annoyed with Sakura. She had been like that for the last hour, coming with outbursts every 10 minutes or so. Granted, a part of him was, really, tempted to pull a prank on this guy. But making a first impression, that wouldn't help much. Sakura turned to look at Naruto in disbelief, before gathering herself. Okay, if Naruto asks me to calm down, I really must be tiring. I mean, he is the most hyper person I know. But that means Sasuke-kun also thinks that I'm getting annoying, again. She took a deep breath to calm herself down, before taking the seat beside Sasuke. Naruto eyed her, before going back to reading his book. 15 minutes later, a silver-haired Junin entered the room. Sakura couldn't help herself, and jumped up screaming, "You're late." He just stared at them passively. How should I say this? My first impression of you guys is, I hate you. Sakura got a moping expression, while Naruto and Sasuke got a better look at their sensei. He was wearing the standard Konoha shinobi outfit, along with iron-plated gloves. His face was mostly covered by his mask, and his left eye was covered by his hitai. All in all, they couldn't get a real good look at him. "Meet me on the roof in 5 minutes, he said before shining away. 5 minutes later on the roof, Kakashi was looking over each of his students. He was mostly looking on Naruto gods. "He looks so much like you, sensei." Then he turned his gaze to the Uchiha. "I really hope I can help him, before chooses a path that he can't be saved from." When the 5 minutes were up, he spoke. "Let's see, why you don't introduce yourselves." "Introduce ourselves? What should we say?" Sakura asked. Kakashi shrugged. "What you like, hate, your dreams, and hobbies. Something like that. Why don't you introduce yourself first, sensei? So we know what to say," Naruto suggested. "Me. I'm Hatake Kakashi. I have no intention of telling you my likes and dislikes. As for my dream, I have few hobbies." The 3 genin were left with sweat drops on the back of their heads. Sakura turned to her new teammates. "So all we found out was his name." Naruto squints while Sasuke's eye twitched. "Now it's your turn. Blondie, you go first." Naruto shot a quick glare for his new nickname. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen, Ichiraku ramen, my friend Tenten, Uruka sensei, and Hokage Ojisan. I dislikes are the 3 minutes you have to wait for your ramen to finish after you have poured water over it, people who will hurt my friends, and can't seem to tell the difference between a kunai and the scroll it's sealed inside." This caused Kakashi to raise an eyebrow. He, of course, knew what Naruto was talking about. Sasuke and Sakura looked confused at Naruto. Naruto just continued, acting like he hadn't noticed. "My hobbies are training, hanging out with Tenten, and tasting new kinds of ramen. In my dream for the future, I want to become the greatest Hokage and make everyone in the village acknowledge me. I also want to find out who my parents were," he finished, getting a nod from Kakashi. "Hi. Next you Pinky. I'm Haruno Sakura. I like, well, the person I like is," Sakura glances at Sasuke, "and my hobbies are, well, my dream is to," glances at Sasuke again, and giggles like crazy. "And, what do you dislike?" Kakashi asked. I dislike Ino Pig." Sakura finished looking over at Naruto. "I promised that I would try to give him a chance. And I start today." Naruto looked genuinely surprised. He was half convinced that she would had said his name, and knew she almost did. What happened to her? Kakashi looked at Sakura. Girls her age must be more interested in love than ninja training. Well, at least she's trying to be nice. Now you, last guy. Sasuke didn't look up when talked. "My name is Uchiha Sasuke. There are many things that I hate, and there aren't a lot of things that I like. Also, I have an ambition that I have no intention to leave as just a dream. The revival of my clan, and to kill a certain man." Naruto looked at Sasuke. "I guess it's the man who killed his clan." Sakura was still hyped after her own introduction. "Sasuke is cool." Kakashi on the other hand had a brief look of seriousness in his eyes, just as I thought. He quickly got back to his old careless look. "Alright, you 3 all have unique personalities. I like that. We're going to begin a mission starting tomorrow. First we're gonna do something we 4 can do together. Survival training." "Survival training? Kakashi-sensei, we have just been through years of training in the academy, can't we just go ahead and start missions?" Naruto asked, rather annoyed. "This is no ordinary training," Kakashi replied. Now Sakura was looking annoyed too. Can't he just get to the point? "Then what kind of training is it?" Kakashi started laughing, freaking the 3 genin out a bit. Sakura looked more annoyed than ever. "What is so funny, sensei?" "Well, if I say this, I'm sure you 3 are going to be shocked. Out of the 27 graduates, only 9 are going to become genin. The other 18 will be sent back to the academy. In other words, This training is going to be a very hard test with a dropout rate of 66%. And as Kakashi had predicted, the three genin were very shocked. See, you three are shocked, he said pointing at them. Are you kidding me? What was the final exam for? Naruto asked in complete disbelief. That, it just picks out those who are qualified to become genin. Did you really think that 3 jutsu were gonna get you graduated? Out there is a world whose only goal is to get you killed. We're not going to send anyone out there who isn't prepared. He paused to let it sink in. Anyway, I'm going to determine whether you pass or fail tomorrow at Training Ground 7. Bring your ninja equipment and meet at 5 a.m. Kakashi could see how shocked the 3 genin were. Even Sasuke, who had until now composed himself, trembled some. Now then, meeting over. Oh yeah, don't eat breakfast. You're going to throw it up, if you do. 5 a.m. at Training Ground 7. The 3 genin of Team 7 came from each their own direction, every one of them half asleep. Good morning, Sakura said tiredly. Hey, it came from Naruto. And the 3 of them waited, and waited, and waited. 3 hours later, finally, Kakashi came going from the tree line. Hi fellows. Good morning. You're late. Both Naruto and Sakura yelled at him, while pointing accusingly at him. Now normally the new and improved Naruto wouldn't do that, but the lack of sleep, and his empty stomach made him momentarily pick up some of his old habits. Yeah, you see a black cat crossed my path, so, Kakashi replied, but trailed off when he saw the faces of Team 7. He cleared his throat. Let's move on. He went over to a clock on a stub a few meters from the genin, alarm set at 12 p.m., he then turned towards them, and took out 2 bells to show, today's topic is to get one of these bells from me. Whoever can't, will have no lunch. What? It came from Naruto, but was ignored by Kakashi. I'm going to tie you there, and eat lunch in front of you, he said, pointing at the 3 stubs, one of them having the alarm clock on it. At that moment the genin understood why he had told them not to eat breakfast. It took a few seconds for them to get over that. But wait, why are there only 2 bells? Sakura asked. Kakashi showed one of his eye smiles. I'm glad you asked, Sakura. Since there's only 2, at least on will have to be tied to the log. That person will fail, since he failed to complete the mission. The person will go back to the academy. It might just be 1, or it can be all 3. You can use Tour Shuriken. You won't be able to get these, unless you come at me with the will to kill me. He looked at his team. There were no objections. Kakashi continued, we're going to start after I say, ready. Start. The genin quickly jumped away, hiding in the surrounding area. Kakashi calmly took out a book, and, apparently, started reading. The most important thing for a shinobi is to hide and conceal yourself. It seems like they got that part down. Naruto was hidden in a tree along the river going through the training ground. He was looking at Kakashi, thinking how to do this. This is a Junin, the highest rank of ninja, only surpassed by the cages. I can't run head first in there, without having a plan. Just to get a few things down, there is no way that I can take him down. He can't be expecting us to either, which means, he is testing out skills. But, he should already know them from our records from the academy. Well, beside me, he must be testing our teamwork. Damn it. There is no way Sasuke Tem will team up with me, he thinks I'm a doby with no talents. And while Sakura has been nicer to me since yesterday, I don't think she'll go against her Sasuke-kun. So the only way we can work together is if I prove myself. And I prove myself by fighting against a Junin, whom I have no chance of beating. Naruto sighed at the dilemma he was in. I guess there's no choice then. The only plus side I can see, is that I can get some info on Kakashi, though he won't even be required to try. Naruto quickly formulated a plan. He made a few cage bunshin, and had them hide throughout the area. Naruto jumped out from his hiding spot, and made his way to the field where Kakashi were standing. He took his stance a couple of meters in front of Kakashi. Kakashi looked from his book, acting like he had only just seen Naruto. He looked back in his book. You do know that it's basics for a shinobi to attack from the shadows, right? Naruto, still in his stance, didn't take his eyes of Kakashi, observing everything. Yeah, but I figured there was no way that I, a newly graduated genin, could beat you, a seasoned junin with years of experience. So I came to the conclusion that this test was to test our skills. Kakashi looked at him again. He is observing me, trying to find anything he can use against me. But he was cut short when the earth began to quake. His eyes widened when he saw razor-sharp crystals shooting out of the ground, trying to impale him. He quickly jumped back to avoid it. Shoten. Kesho no Hari, it came from Naruto. Kakashi took his eyes of the pink crystals, and looked at Naruto. For the first time since he had met Team 7, he was truly shocked. Was it not for years of experience in the field and in the war, he would have shown emotions. Shoten, I haven't heard of that in a while. I think there was something up in Ta no Kuni, but to think it would appear here in Konoha, and it to appear in the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. The two other members of Team 7 weren't handling themselves as well as Kakashi was. Sakura's face was full of shock. Shoten. Is that even a Kekkei Genkai? And how can Naruto have it? She thought. How the hell should I know? Just don't get hit by it, cha. It came from her inner self, which she completely agreed with. Sasuke had his eyes narrowed. How can the Dobi have a Kekkei Genkai? He is a clan-less loser with no family. Kakashi looked at Naruto over his book. Well, since you want to show your skills, why don't you? Alright, Naruto said before charging. He aimed a punch in the guy, but it was easily parried by Kakashi. Kakashi frowned. The punch had been a lot harder than he would have thought it to be. It didn't stop Naruto. He aimed a kick at the ribs, but it was again parried. He then aimed a kick in the chest. Knowing that Kakashi would parry, he focused his chakra there. Kakashi parried, but was pushed back a few centimeters, much to Kakashi's surprise. Naruto used this to jump back through the air. Kakashi used this to his advantage, and threw a kunai. Naruto saw this, and quickly conjured up a hexagonal shuriken in his hand, and threw it to intercept the kunai. They clashed together and were pushed out of the way. Naruto landed with a smirk. That was my Kesho, Rakuku shuriken. Kakashi still had his book up, but he had to focus a lot more than he had thought, so, he is able to crystallize the air around him. It may seem like he doesn't have a weapon, but everything around him is. Also, it doesn't seem like he needs to use hand signs, but how was he able to kick so hard so suddenly? Kakashi took a closer look at Naruto, and saw light reflect off him, which caused Kakashi to raise his visible eyebrow. Naruto nodded at Kakashi. It's just what you think, Kakashi-sensei. I call it Kesho no Yoroi. Kakashi didn't react. To think he ranked dead last. Kakashi was, to say the least, impressed. Sensei, you're not going to retaliate? Naruto asked in a ready pose. Kakashi looked at Naruto. He knew that he wanted him to attack him, and that he had something up his sleeve. Kakashi shrugged before going through some hand signs. Sweden. Mizorapa. Kakashi took a deep breath, before beginning to spew out water towards Naruto. He made sure it wasn't as powerful, as he would make it towards an enemy. He had to remember, this was just a test. What Naruto did next completely shocked Kakashi. Naruto raised his arm, just like to intercept, and when the water was a meter from him, it started crystallizing and split so it didn't hit him. Kakashi quickly realized that this jutsu weren't going to work, it was just supplying Naruto with more material to crystallize. Shoten. Kesho Hachidori, Naruto cried with the ram sign up. From the crystals that Naruto had just made, thousands of small hummingbirds were created. They appeared around Naruto, until there were no crystals left on the ground. With an unsaid command, they attacked. They closed in quickly, aiming all over Kakashi. Kakashi jumped into the air just in time to avoid them. When they hit the ground, they created a big cloud of debris. That was a close one, Kakashi thought, thinking he was out of harm's way. Shoten. Rakuku Shuriken. Ranbu. It came from several places around the clearing. From 5 places barrages of crystal shuriken was shot at him. Shit, he thought, before quickly performing Kawarimi no Jutsu. Naruto's shadow clones jumped out of hiding, before dispelling. Naruto nodded to himself in satisfaction, before jumping away. Now he just had to find the others. Naruto was jumping through the canopies when he heard Sakura scream. He quietly made his way there, making sure he wasn't detected by Kakashi. He finally found Sakura. She was lying motionless on the forest floor. He wasn't worried if she had been hurt. He knew Kakashi wouldn't take it that far. He made his way down to where she was, and after a brief examination it was clear she was under a genjutsu. He put 2 fingers on her forehead, while the other was in a ram sign, Kai. Slowly her eyes fluttered up. As soon as she could see where she was, she quickly got to her feet. Sasuke-kun. Relax, Sakura-chan. You were under a genjutsu, Naruto said, trying to get his teammate to calm down. But she was still going on about she had seen Sasuke dying. Sakura. That got her attention. Stop fussing like that. Sasuke is fine. You were under a genjutsu. Besides, this is just a test, so there is no way that Kakashi-sensei would hurt any of us badly, let alone kill us. That seemed to sink in, but she quickly shook her head, but I need to find him fast. We don't have much time until the test ends, she said, starting to run out of the clearing. Naruto quickly grabbed her arm. What is it, Naruto Baka? Naruto sighed at her affectionate nickname for him. I agree, but we can't just take him on one-on-one. We need to work together, all 3 of us. Sakura stopped trying to struggle his way out of his grip, and he let her go. Then she turned to face him fully. But, one of us will fail. Maybe, but it's better than all 3 of us failing. None of them said anything for a few seconds. Listen, I'll give the bells to you too. You like Sasuke, right? It was an obvious question he already knew the answer on, but she blushed deeply and nodded. Good, then you two can be on a team together. I'll just take another year at the academy. I already failed 3 times, what is one more time to that, right? Sakura was looking at Naruto in disbelief. Was he always this nice? I kind of feel bad at how I treated him. The rosette nodded. Okay, let's go find Sasuke-kun. No, Sasuke said. Naruto stared at the black-haired genin in front of him with outrage. Why? You both will pass. We need to work together to get those bells. Sasuke scoffed. I don't need help from a clan-less loser like you to do that. It didn't seem like that, when we found you buried to your neck before, Naruto replied with a bit of venom earning a glare. They kept bickering like that, with Sakura just sitting between them. Now normally she would jump to the defense of her Sasuke-kun, but she could see the wisdom in Naruto's words, and she had seen what he could do with Shoten. Also, this meant that she would work together with Sasuke, and that she would be on the same team as Sasuke. But she knew they didn't have long time to do it. Sasuke-kun, we don't have very long time again before the test ends. Wouldn't it be better just to do it together and get it over with? She asked carefully, not wanting to get on the wrong side of Sasuke. Sasuke actually seemed to think about it. He looked up in the sky to see the sun's position. He scoffed. Fine. Naruto nodded at Sakura, who was overjoyed now. 2 minutes to 12. Kakashi was standing the middle of the clearing again. He looked over at the clock and sighed. I guess it's just another team that doesn't pass. I actually hope they would. Sensei's son, a Shoten user, and Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, the last loyal Uchiha, a true genius, and the girl weren't bad either. She just needs to get over her fangirl stadium. Oh well, maybe next time. It was then that 3 Narutos ran out of the tree line. He watched them coming, but didn't do anything visible to counter them. They all brought their arms to what looked like a guard. Shoten, Sushotu. On their forearms deep blue-colored crystal tantos formed. They charged forward as one, slashing like crazy at Kakashi. He could see that Naruto hadn't had this style practiced as much as the academy-style taijutsu. He kept parrying and dodging. At last, he decided that it was time to get rid of the clones. He kicked hard in one of the Naruto's stomach and it dispelled. He was just about to do the same to the second, when he heard a voice shout behind him. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu. Sasuke yelled, spewing out a large fireball towards Kakashi. Kakashi saw this coming, and jumped out of the way. He was a little worried that it had hit Naruto, but it didn't last, as he saw them dispel. They were clones all along, huh? He didn't have time to think, as he saw a barrage kunai being cast out of one of the trees. With closer inspection, he saw that it was Sakura. He brought up his kunai and began blocking them. He had just landed, when Naruto bolted out of the tree line again. He was getting closer and closer to Kakashi, and was just about there when the alarm ringed. All three genin looked in disbelief and despair at the clock. No, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it, Naruto said, mentally kicking himself for not being a bit faster. A few minutes later, Sasuke, Sakura and Naruto were tied to the logs, and as Kakashi had said he would, was eating his lunch in front of them. Naruto's stomach was the loudest, but Sasuke's and Sakura's wasn't silent. Well then, none of you got the bells, Kakashi said. All of them were waiting for the dooming words. You pass, Kakashi said. They stared disbelieving at him. But, you said that we would fail and be sent back to the academy if we didn't get the bells. Naruto exclaimed. Kakashi nodded. I lied, he stated flatly. But sensei, what was the test for then? Sakura asked. You three are the first I have passed. People I had previously were blockheads, who just thought about themselves, and didn't want to risk getting kicked back to the academy. They didn't want to work together because they knew one of them had to fail. But that is not how being a shinobi works, especially a Konoha shinobi. We work together, train together and basically live together. He looked up in the sky. In the world of shinobi, those who break the rules are called scrum. But those who don't take care of their friends are even worse than scum. You guys worked together to have a chance, even though you knew one of you would fail the test. So to answer your question, Sakura, it was to test your worth as a team. Naruto looked at Kakashi, as he moved around the logs to tie up the robes. You know he isn't that bad. He is actually kind of cool. When he had tied them up, he turned to them. The training ends here. Everyone passes. Team 7 will start doing missions starting tomorrow. XXX, XX, XXX, XX, XXX. Fuinjutsu, literally meaning, sealing techniques, are a type of jutsu that seal objects, living beings, chakra, along with a wide variety of other things within another object. Shoten. Kesho no Hari, crystal release. Crystal needles. The user creates long, sharp, and pointed bright pink and white crystals that shoot at the target at extremely high speeds with pinpoint accuracy. Kesho. Rakuku Shuriken, crystal release. Hexagonal shuriken. The user creates crystal shuriken and launches them at the opponent. The shuriken are six-sided with spikes at the sides of each blade, resembling snowflakes. Kesho no Yoroi, crystal armor. This technique allows the user to cover his skin with a thin sheet of crystal, protecting himself from physical attacks. This armor can also aid the user to perform stronger physical attacks. The user can control the thickness of the crystal, by focusing chakra in certain areas, to either give even higher defense, or harder punches or kicks. The crystal is transparent and can only be noticed by light reflecting off it. Sweden. Mizoripa, water release. Wild water wave. Water gushes out from the mouth like a waterfall and washes away the enemy. One can freely control the power of this technique with the amount chakra one releases. Having many variations, this is a basic water release technique. Shoten. Kesho Hachidori, crystal release. Crystal hummingbirds. Many hummingbirds are formed from crystal, the birds then home on the target dodging simple jutsu that attempt to stop them. Shoten. Rakuku Shuriken. Ranbu, Crystal Release. Hexagonal Shuriken. Wild Dance, the user creates and throws a vast amount of crystal shuriken at her opponent. Kawarimi no Jutsu, Body Replacement Technique. With this technique, one replaces their own body with a block of wood or some other object, the moment an attack lands. This creates an optical illusion, making the enemy think the attack was successful. From this, the user can use the lapse in the enemy's attention to attack or flee from the battlefield. Explosive tags can be attached to the replacement for an added surprise. It's a basic ninjutsu even taught at the academy, but it's a useful art that can be applied in variety of situations. Shoten. Sushotu, Crystal Release. Jade Crystal Blade. With this technique the user can quickly form a blade made of crystal on her arm, and use it in a manner reminiscent of a tanto. Blades can be formed on both arms if needed. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu, Fire Release. Great Fireball Technique. A technique where chakra needed inside the body is converted into fire, and expelled from the mouth in a massive orb of roaring flame or as a continuous flame thrower. The scope of the attack is altered by controlling the volume of chakra that is mustered. The released flames will engulf their target, and leave a crater on the ground surface. This technique apparently requires more than average chakra reserves and most genin should not be able to do this technique. The Uchiha clan also uses this technique as a coming of age, right, and as such was a common and one of the more favored techniques amongst them.